Her face crumpled. For a moment, I felt grief, not guilt. Grief for the mother she could have been, for the family we might have had. "Goodbye, Mom." The evening air hit my face like oxygen after years underground. I walked to my car. Behind me, the front door opened again. Footsteps. My father appeared in the doorway, supported by Derek. Small, fragile, human. For the first time in my life, he did not look like someone who could control me. I got into the car, started the engine, and drove away. I didn't look back, not once, because sometimes freedom isn't loud. Sometimes it's just the quiet decision to keep driving. But here's what no one tells you about boundaries. The moment you set them, the entire system you escaped begins to rearrange itself. And what happened next? No one at that table saw it coming. Not Derek, not my mother, and certainly not my father. Exactly 1 week after that dinner, my phone rang. Mom. I stared at the screen longer than necessary, not because I was afraid, but because I already understood something most people learn too late. Distance changes people. Sometimes it softens them. Sometimes it exposes them. Sometimes it forces reality to walk through the front door. I answered. "Hi, Mom." Her voice sounded older, thinner, like something inside her had quietly collapsed. "Camille, I wanted you to know what's been happening here." I leaned against the kitchen counter. "Okay." A long inhale on the other end. "Your father's condition is progressing faster than the doctors expected." I didn't respond. Not cold. Just listening. "He needs help with everything now. Meals, medication, getting dressed some mornings." Another pause. Then she said the sentence I think she had been building toward since the call began. "Derek is doing it." I closed my eyes briefly. Not in satisfaction, just recognition. Gravity had finally arrived. "Derek took a leave of absence from work," she continued. "With the baby coming, they couldn't afford full-time care yet, and your father refuses to consider a nursing facility." Of course he did. Men who spend their lives in control rarely surrender it gracefully. "He already missed an important project," she added quietly. "There's talk he might lose the promotion he was expecting." For a moment, I pictured Derek, golden boy Derek, the son who had never been asked to bend, now suddenly discovering that adulthood sometimes demands sacrifice, not the glamorous kind, the exhausting kind, the unfair kind, the kind no one applauds. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it, not as revenge, not as justice, just as truth, because here is something people misunderstand. Setting boundaries is not about watching others suffer. It is about refusing to suffer for them. "Megan is struggling," my mother said softly. "She didn't sign up for this." Her voice cracked slightly. "They're fighting a lot." Then she stopped herself. "She says she's starting to understand why you left." That sentence lingered between us. Megan, the quiet observer at the dinner table, had seen something. Sometimes it takes stepping into someone else's burden to understand the weight they carried alone. "Thank you for telling me," I said. Silence. Then the question came. Small, fragile, almost afraid of itself. "Will you come back and help?" No hesitation. "No," not harsh, not emotional, just clear. "But I hope Derek figures it out." I ended the call gently. And afterward, I noticed something surprising. I didn't feel guilt, not even a flicker. Only calm, because for the first time in my life, my peace did not depend on their approval. 3 weeks later, a text arrived from my mother, but it didn't look like her usual messages. No cheerful emojis, no polite distance, just words, real ones. "Camille, I've been thinking a lot. I owe you an apology, a real one, not an excuse. I should have protected you when you were sick. I should have stood up to your father. I should have been there. I wasn't. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for anything. I just need you to know that I see it now. I see what we did. And I am so deeply sorry." I read it once, then again, then a third time. Because if you knew my mother, you would understand how monumental this was. She had lived her entire life in the passive voice. Mistakes were made. Situations happened. Feelings were misunderstood. But never, "I was wrong." Yet here it was. Clear, unhidden, accountable. I didn't answer immediately. Some messages deserve space before response. For 2 days, I carried the words inside me, turning them over gently, testing their weight. On the third day, I replied, "I appreciate you saying that. I'm not ready to talk yet, but I hear you." Her response came almost instantly. "That's okay. Whenever you're ready, or even if you never are. Whatever you need." 4 words, whatever you need. So different from the 4 words I had once been given. That Thursday at dinner, I showed Harper the message. She read it slowly, then placed the phone down. "How do you feel?" she asked. I considered it carefully. "Hopeful," I admitted, "but cautious." She smiled. "That's not guarded, that's wise." Harper squeezed my hand. "You don't owe her forgiveness, Cam, but you're allowed to accept accountability when it shows up." And she was right. Healing is not the same as forgetting, and accountability is where healing begins. 2 weeks later, something arrived that I never expected. A letter, handwritten. My name stretched across the envelope in uneven script. The return address told me everything before I even opened it. My father. I carried it around for 3 days, not avoiding it, preparing for it. Anticipation is sometimes heavier than truth. Finally, on a quiet Thursday evening, I poured a glass of wine, sat beside the window, and opened it. The handwriting wavered across the page, each letter a visible battle against trembling hands. "Dear Camille, I am not good at this. At apologizing, at admitting when I am wrong. Your mother says it is pride. She is probably right. I failed you. Not because I didn't know better, but because I made a choice. Your brother's happiness over your survival. I will carry that for the rest of my life. I am not asking you to come back. I am not asking you to forgive me. I know I do not deserve either. I only want you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. I see the daughter I pushed away, and the woman she became without me. You are stronger than I ever was. I lost you not because of Parkinson's, but because I was not the father you needed. I am sorry." Those words are not enough, but they are all I have left. Your father, if you still allow me that title, Richard. I folded the letter carefully, placed it in a drawer. I didn't respond, but I didn't throw it away either, because forgiveness is not a light switch. It is a landscape, and you walk it slowly. The next night Harper came over. I handed her the letter. She read it silently, then looked up. "Well," I curled my feet beneath me on the couch. "Sad," I said honestly. "For him. For what he's losing, for what we could have had." She nodded. "Do you feel guilty?" I thought about that, really thought. "No," I said finally. "I used to feel guilty for everything, for not being enough, not trying hard enough, not being the daughter he wanted." I lifted my glass. "But cancer taught me something." "What?" "That some people will never love you the way you need, no matter what you do." I met her eyes. "And that isn't your failure, it's theirs." Harper smiled softly. "That might be the strongest thing you've ever said." I shook my head. "No, the strongest thing I ever did was walk away. But the story doesn't end with apologies, because life, real life, keeps moving. 6 months later, everything would look different again. My career, my heart, my definition of family. 6 months after that dinner, I was still cancer-free, not just surviving, thriving. Dr. Patterson used that word at my last appointment. "Thriving, Camille." I almost laughed when she said it. For years I had lived braced for impact, waiting for bad news, for relapse, for another rug to be pulled. But scan after scan came back clear. No evidence of disease. And slowly I stopped holding my breath. My career accelerated in ways I hadn't predicted. When you survive something that strips you down to your bones, corporate politics lose their power. Deadlines don't scare you. Presentations don't intimidate you. Rejection doesn't sting the same way, because you've already stared at something far worse. 3 months after that dinner, I was promoted again. Creative director, corner office, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Boston skyline. I brought my Monstera plant with me. It had survived chemo. It had survived my tears. It deserved better lighting too. Sometimes I would sit in that office, sunlight spilling across my desk, and think, I built this. Not them, not their approval, not their support, me, and something else changed. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. Not to my father, not to Derek, not to some invisible scoreboard in my head. I hired 2 junior designers that year, mentored them, encouraged them, protected them from toxic clients. And I realized something almost painfully obvious. I was becoming the kind of support I never had. That realization alone felt like victory. And then I met James. It happened in the most unremarkable way possible. Coffee shop. Thursday afternoon, Harper running late, he asked if he could share the outlet. High school history teacher. Kind eyes, terrible jokes. The kind of man who listens when you speak, not to respond, but to understand. On our 3rd date, I told him about the cancer. On our 5th, I told him about my family. He didn't flinch, didn't try to rescue me, didn't offer grand solutions. He just said, "That must have been incredibly lonely." And somehow that simple acknowledgement felt like healing. Because the right people don't rewrite your pain, they witness it. Harper was dating too. A surgeon named Alina, sharp mind, soft laugh. They argued about medical ethics at dinner in ways that made me feel like I was watching a rom-com written by intellectuals. Every Thursday became sacred again. Dinner, stories, wine. Laughter, chosen family, not perfect, but real. And here's something I learned. Blood creates relatives. Showing up creates family. My mother continued texting every few weeks. Small messages. Thinking of you. Hope work is going well. I saw something today that reminded me of you. Sometimes I responded. Sometimes I didn't. The distance wasn't hostility. It was boundary. There's a difference. My father's Parkinson's progressed steadily. He eventually agreed to part-time care. Paid for from the retirement account he once guarded so fiercely. Derek visited twice a week, sometimes 3, not because he wanted to, but because he had to. And maybe, just maybe, because he finally understood something about responsibility. I hadn't seen them again. Not yet. Maybe not ever. And for the first time, I was okay with that uncertainty. Let me speak directly to you now. If you've made it this far, you're not just listening to a story. You're recognizing something in it. Maybe you've been the spare child, the responsible one, the one expected to absorb everyone else's chaos. Maybe you've been the one who showed up for others, only to realize no one showed up for you. And maybe you've asked yourself the question that haunted me for years. Was I just not enough? Let me answer that clearly. You were enough. Some people just don't have the capacity to love you properly. And that is not your failure. It's theirs. There's a myth about forgiveness, that it's noble, immediate, required. It's not. Forgiveness is a process. Sometimes it takes months, sometimes years, sometimes it never comes. And that's okay too, because forgiveness is about peace, not performance. You don't owe anyone absolution just because they finally feel consequences. One evening, about 9 months after the dinner, I found myself back in that same coffee shop. Sunlight through tall windows, city humming outside, Harper across from me, James joining later. My phone buzzed, a photo from my mother. It was my father, sitting on the porch, thinner, older, but smiling. The caption read, "He asked about you today." That was it. No guilt, no pressure, just information. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel obligation. I felt something else, perspective. I typed back, "I hope he's comfortable." It was honest, and that was enough. Here's what survival really changes, not your strength, your clarity. You begin to see relationships for what they are, not what you wish they were. You stop chasing crumbs. You stop shrinking to fit expectations. You stop volunteering to be the emotional shock absorber for people who would never do the same for you. And you realize something terrifying and freeing at the same time. You are allowed to choose peace, even if it costs you proximity. That folder labeled family still lives on my phone. I don't open it much anymore, but I keep it. Not for revenge, not for resentment, for truth, because memory can blur. People can rewrite, but facts don't. And sometimes keeping receipts isn't about punishing others. It's about protecting yourself. I am 30 years old. cancer survivor, creative director, friend, partner, woman who finally understands her own worth. And if there's one thing this entire journey taught me, it's this. The most loving thing you can sometimes do is walk away. Not dramatically, not angrily, just decisively. Because love without reciprocity is erosion. And you are not required to erode for anyone. If this story hit somewhere deep, sit with that. Maybe you needed to hear it. Maybe someone you know needs to hear it. Because there are so many Camille's out there, still waiting for parents to choose them, still believing endurance equals love, still sacrificing themselves for people who wouldn't cross the street for them. Let me tell you what I wish someone had told me at 28. You are not too much. You are not dramatic. You are not selfish for wanting to be supported. And you are absolutely allowed to say, I can't deal with this right now. Not as revenge, as protection, 4 words. That's all it took. Not to destroy a family, but to reveal one. And once revealed, you can finally decide what to do with it. I chose peace. I chose growth. I chose the people who show up. And I chose myself. If you're still here, thank you. Truly. Stories like this matter because they remind us we're not alone in our quiet battles. If you've ever had to set a boundary with family, what happened? And if you needed permission to protect your peace, consider this it. Until next time, take care of yourself. Really. Because sometimes the person who needs you most is you. And we believe the best arrangement is for someone to move back home. His eyes landed on me, direct, certain. Camille, you're the obvious choice. Obvious. The word hit harder than if he'd shouted. Not best. Not willing, obvious. You work remotely, he went on. You don't have children, no husband, no obligations preventing you from helping. Helping. As if my life were empty space waiting to be filled with his needs. I've already had your old room prepared, he finished. It's time you came home and contributed to this family. Contributed. The irony almost made me laugh. Derek nodded. It makes sense, Cam. I've got the baby coming, work is crazy, of course. Golden suns are rarely interrupted by sacrifice. You understand, he added. I looked at him carefully, and something inside me, something long dormant, went completely still. Because in that moment, I realized they truly believed this was reasonable. Expected. Automatic. My mother reached for her wine. Your father needs you, she said softly. There it was again. Need, not love, not repair, need. And suddenly, the folder inside my purse felt heavier. I folded my hands calmly. Before I answer, I said, I want to ask something. 4 faces turned toward me, surprised. Richard Atwood was not accustomed to questions. And what I asked next was the first crack in the entire evening. Before I answer, I repeated calmly, I want to ask you something, Dad. My father blinked. A small reaction, but significant. Men like Richard Atwood were not often interrupted, especially not by daughters. Go ahead, he said, though his tone carried the faint irritation of someone already regretting granting permission. I held his gaze. When was the last time you asked how I was doing? The question landed softly, but its weight was enormous. No one spoke. The chandelier hummed faintly overhead. Somewhere in the house, the refrigerator motor kicked on. Tiny sounds suddenly magnified by silence. My father frowned. What kind of question is that? A simple one, I replied. When was the last time you asked if I was okay? Derek shifted in his chair. Megan stopped rubbing her belly. My mother's wine glass hovered halfway to her lips. I continued before anyone could redirect the conversation. When was the last time you asked if I was even still alive? Now the silence sharpened. My father leaned back slightly. You're sitting here, aren't you? You look perfectly healthy to me. Perfectly healthy. I almost smiled, the absurdity of it, the blindness. Dad, I said quietly, do you know if I'm still in remission? He opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time since I'd walked through that door, Richard Atwood had no immediate answer. Let me tell you something important. Powerful men hate questions they cannot control. And in that moment, control began slipping through his fingers. Camille, my mother said nervously, maybe this isn't... No, I said gently. It is exactly the time. I folded my hands in my lap to hide how steady they were. 2 years ago, they would have been shaking. Now they were still, grounded. I had stage 3 cancer, I said. The words seemed to echo off the polished wood. I went through 6 months of chemotherapy. Stillness. I lost my hair. Derek stared at the table. I lost 15 pounds. My mother's eyes filled with tears. I nearly lost my life. My father's face tightened, but I wasn't finished. And you know what the strangest part is? I continued softly. You never once asked if I survived. The room tilted, not physically, emotionally, as if gravity had shifted. That's not fair, my mother whispered. We were dealing with the wedding. The wedding. Of course, always the wedding, I nodded slowly. Yes. Derek's wedding, the one important enough to plan for a year. The one important enough to spend $80,000 on. The number still burned in my memory. But I didn't say it yet. Not yet. Timing matters when you tell the truth. Derek cleared his throat. We didn't realize it was that serious. I turned toward him. I called Dad the day I was diagnosed. I was crying. I told him it was stage 3. My father's jaw tightened. I never said, you did. And that was when I reached for my purse. Slowly, deliberately, every movement intentional. The air in the room changed instantly, because something primal happens when evidence appears. People feel it before they even know what it is. I pulled out my phone, unlocked it, opened the folder, and placed it face up on the table. You see, I said calmly, one thing cancer taught me was documentation. Derek leaned forward slightly. My mother went very still. My father didn't move at all. Would you like to see the messages where I asked for help paying my medical bills? I continued. And you told me to take out a personal loan. No one spoke. Or the texts where I told Mom my chemo schedule, and she asked me to help choose between roses and peonies. My mother inhaled sharply. Or maybe, I said, scrolling once, you'd prefer the hospital visitor records. I slid the phone toward the center of the table. The glow illuminated the polished wood. 36 entries, dates, times, treatment sessions, and beside each one the visitor column. None, none, none. 36 times 0 visits. My mother reached for the phone first. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled. I don't understand. You don't remember, I corrected gently. There's a difference. Derek took the phone next, his face drained of color. This can't be right. It is, I said. Every screenshot is time-stamped. Every record is official. Megan leaned over his shoulder now, reading, silent, but something in her expression shifted. Recognition. Not shock, recognition. As if she were seeing a pattern she hadn't noticed before. My father finally spoke. This is the past. His voice sounded rough, less controlled. What's done is done. What matters now is the present. There it was, the pivot. The attempt to skip accountability and move straight to need. I'm sick, Camille, he continued. I need help. We need to move forward. Forward. The word echoed inside me. I almost admired the audacity. You want to move forward? I asked quietly. Yes. Without acknowledging what happened. He waved a trembling hand dismissively. There were circumstances. Circumstances, such a tidy word. So much easier than saying, we abandoned you. Then Megan spoke for the first time. Did you know about all this? Her voice was soft, but it cut cleanly through the room. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at my father. Silence. Then Derek answered, quietly. He knew. The room shifted again. My father's composure cracked. You don't understand the pressure we were under. The pressure, I repeated. I stood slowly, not in anger, in clarity. I was poisoning my body to stay alive, I said. You were tasting wedding cake. No one breathed. I was taking out loans to pay for treatment. You were writing checks for centerpieces. My mother began crying openly now, mascara streaking. I didn't know, she kept whispering. You knew enough, I said. You just chose not to look. Let me tell you something most people don't realize. The truth is rarely explosive. It is quiet, precise, unavoidable. and once spoken, it rearranges every relationship in the room. I picked up my phone again, slipped it back into my purse. I don't need an apology, I said. Not yet. I just need you to remember this moment when you ask what I'm going to do next. My father's breathing had grown shallow. You have a responsibility to this family, he said. And there it was. The sentence that finally ended my silence forever. I smiled. Not cold, not cruel, clear. Let me tell you what family means, Dad. And the next words would change everything. Let me tell you what family means, Dad. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The quiet ones always land harder. Family means showing up, I said. It means answering the phone at 2 in the morning when someone you love is terrified. My mother let out a shaky breath. Family means sitting beside a hospital bed, even if you don't know what to say. I looked at Derek. Family means offering help when medical bills pile up, instead of spending $80,000 on a wedding. The number hit the table like a dropped plate. Derek flinched. My father's jaw tightened. And family, I finished softly, means not pretending someone doesn't exist just because their suffering is inconvenient. The silence afterward felt alive, heavy, watching. I saw it then, something I had never witnessed before. Uncertainty in my father. Richard Atwood had always been immovable, a mountain. Now I could see the fractures. Camille, my mother whispered through tears, please don't do this. Don't do this. As if I were the one tearing something apart. As if truth were the weapon. But the truth is never the weapon. The truth is the mirror. And some people cannot bear their reflection. I turned toward my father again. You said I have a responsibility to this family. I do. I let the pause stretch. But responsibilities go both ways. No one spoke, so I continued. I spent 6 months fighting for my life. 6 months of poison in my veins. 6 months waking up not knowing if I would see another year. I swallowed, not from emotion, but from memory. And where was my family? My eyes moved from face to face. Planning seating charts. Tasting cakes. Choosing flowers. Derek shut his eyes briefly. Megan stared down at her folded hands. My mother cried harder. But my father just stared, as if sheer will might bend the conversation back under his control. Camille, he said finally, voice rougher now, you're being dramatic. Dramatic. The word echoed in my head, and something inside me went very, very still. Let me tell you something. There is a moment in every person's life when the last thread snaps. Not loudly, not violently, just cleanly, for me. This was that moment. You don't get to call me dramatic, I said calmly. You lost that right the day you told me you couldn't deal with my cancer because Derek was planning a wedding. My father's face paled. You did. I didn't need to show the phone again. We all knew. You don't get to Camille me anymore either, I continued. I am not your backup plan. I am not the daughter you ignore until you need something. And I am certainly not moving back into this house to become your caregiver. There. Said irrevocable. The word hung in the air. My mother gasped softly. Derek leaned forward. Cam, come on, don't be like this. Don't be like this. The phrase people use when boundaries inconvenience them. I had responsibilities too, I said, meeting his eyes. I had a career. I had a life. I had cancer. And I handled all of it alone. He looked away first. Then my father did something I never expected. Something that froze the entire room. His shoulders sagged. And suddenly Richard Atwood looked old. Not powerful, not commanding, just old. Camille, he said, his voice broke. Actually broke. I'm scared. Tears filled his eyes. I don't know what's coming. I don't know what this disease is going to take from me. His trembling hand wiped clumsily at his face. I need you. Please, you're my daughter. I want to pause here. Because this is where most people expect the story to soften. Where the daughter melts. Where forgiveness rushes in. Where blood overrides memory. For one dangerous second, I felt it. The pull. The ancient instinct to comfort him. To finally be chosen. To finally be needed. The little girl inside me, the one who had spent decades trying to earn his approval, stirred. But she wasn't alone anymore. The woman I had become stepped forward. And she remembered everything. The hospital hallway, the voicemail, the empty visitor column, the loan rejection, the wedding photos. So instead of collapsing, I stepped closer, looked directly into my father's tear-filled eyes, and spoke quietly. 2 years ago, I said, I called you crying. I told you I had cancer. I told you I was terrified. The room held its breath. And do you remember what you said to me? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. We can't deal with this right now. I let the words fall slowly between us. Snow settling, cold, final. Then I smiled, not cruel, not triumphant, just free. So here's my answer, Dad. I took a breath and gave him the same 4 words he had once given me. I can't deal with this right now. The sound my mother made was almost a sob. Derek's mouth fell open. My father stared at me as if he had just realized consequences were real things. Not theoretical, not avoidable, real, and standing right in front of him, I picked up my purse, slipped the strap over my shoulder. No shaking, no hesitation, just calm. Years earlier I would have stayed, explained, softened, not anymore. I walked toward the door, past the family photos that forgot I existed, past the chandelier, past the illusion. Camille, wait! Derek called. I didn't. My mother rushed after me. Please don't do this. We're your family. I stopped at the threshold, turned once. Family doesn't leave you alone to die, I said gently. And love isn't something you offer only when you need something back. Last week, my father called me crying, and I almost didn't recognize the sound. Because in 30 years of being his daughter, I had never once heard Richard Atwood cry. Not when his mother died. Not when he lost his job in 2008. Not when my brother crashed his first car. But last week, his voice was shaking, and I let it ring 3 times before I answered. 2 years ago, I was the one crying. 2 years ago, I called him from a hospital hallway and told him I had stage 3 cancer. And he gave me 4 words I will never forget. 4 words that rearranged my entire life. And when he needed me last week, I gave them back. Exactly the same. But before we get there, you need to understand who I was before cancer. Because the girl who made that call is not the same woman who answered it. 2 years ago, I was 28 years old, a senior graphic designer at a mid-sized agency in Boston. Exposed brick walls, too many succulents, an espresso machine that cost more than my first car. I had clawed my way up from intern to senior designer in 5 years. No help, no shortcuts, no Atwood safety net. My brother Derek got a full ride to Boston College, not because he earned a scholarship, because my father wrote a check without blinking. When I asked about private school, Dad looked at me over his glasses and said, "Girls don't need expensive degrees." So I signed for $87,000 in student loans. And I paid every cent myself. That was the hierarchy in our house. Derek was the investment. I was the afterthought. Still, I built a life. A 1-bedroom apartment in Somerville. A monstera plant I somehow kept alive for 3 years. Coffee at 6:30. Gym 3 times a week. Dinner with Harper every Thursday. It was quiet. It was mine. And I liked it. Until the phone call. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Slack notifications pinging every 30 seconds. My eye twitching over a fintech campaign deadline. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something small and instinctual made me answer. "Miss Atwood, this is Dr. Patterson's office. We have your biopsy results." And I remember the exact temperature of my coffee. Lukewarm, because I had forgotten about it. I remember the way sunlight hit the glass partition in the conference room. I remember thinking, biopsy results should not come with that tone of voice. The doctor would like to see you tomorrow at 8 a.m. They don't call you in for good news. The next morning, Dr. Patterson didn't waste time. Stage 3 breast cancer. The words didn't feel real. They felt like they belonged to someone else. Some older woman. Someone with children. Someone who hadn't just bought a navy blazer on sale 2 weeks ago. "The tumor is aggressive. We need to start chemotherapy immediately." And I left my body. I watched myself nod. watched myself ask logistical questions, watched myself schedule treatment. But inside, everything was falling. "Do you have someone who can drive you home?" the doctor asked. I thought about Harper. But it was 9 a.m. and then, without thinking, I said, "I'll call my dad." Because when the world breaks, daughters call their fathers. Right. I walked into the hallway, sat on a cold metal bench. My hands were shaking so badly it took 3 tries to tap his name. The phone rang twice. "Camille, what is it? I'm in the middle of something." I could hear my mother in the background. Wedding chatter, because Derek's wedding was 4 months away, and it had swallowed my family whole. Every conversation, every dinner, every breath. The wedding, the wedding, the wedding. "Dad," my voice cracked. "I just came from the doctor." Silence. "I have cancer." More silence. "Stage 3. I was crying now in a hospital hallway full of strangers. "Dad, I'm scared." And then he said it, 4 words. "We can't deal with this." I stopped breathing. "Your brother is planning his wedding. There's too much going on right now." I thought I misheard him. "I'm sorry, what?" "You're strong, Camille. You've always been independent. You'll figure it out." Click, the line went dead. 2 minutes and 31 seconds. I screenshot the call log. 8:47 am because something inside me understood. Even then, I would need proof. That was the last time I called my father for 2 years. Chemo started the next week. Chair 7. 4th floor infusion center. Reclining seats arranged in a semicircle like a support group no one wanted to join. Most patients brought someone. Chair 3 had a husband whispering encouragement. Chair 5 had a mother reading Harry Potter aloud. Chair 9 had a daughter with homemade soup. Chair 7 had me. "First time?" the nurse asked. I nodded. "It's okay to be nervous. Most people bring someone." I looked around the room. I texted my mother. "Starting chemo today, I'm scared." She replied 6 hours later. "Hang in there, sweetie. At the florist with Megan picking centerpieces. Peonies or roses?" I stared at the message. Then I typed, "Roses are nice." And I screenshot it, added it to the folder, family. I went through 6 months of chemotherapy, 36 hospital visits. Do you know how many times someone from my family walked through those doors? 0. Not once. Not to sit with me, not to hold my hand, not to see the bald patches, not to watch poison drip into my veins. They were busy, planning seating charts, tasting cake, arguing about napkin colors. The night I lost my hair, I called my mom at 2:47 am. She didn't answer. She called back at 10:23 am. "Oh, honey, I had my phone on silent. Megan and I were at the spa." I told her it was nothing. Because at some point, you stop expecting comfort. Derek's wedding was October 15th. My last chemo session was in November. I wasn't invited to be in the wedding party, not even a reading, but I thought maybe I'd go, sit in the back, see my family. Dad called. "It's best if you don't attend." "You look unwell. We don't want anything to overshadow Derek's day." Anything. Meaning me, meaning cancer. Meaning the reminder that his daughter might be dying. I didn't argue. I watched the wedding on Facebook from my bed. The happiest day of our family's life. I screenshot it, added it to the folder, closed the app. Then the medical bills came. $47,000 after insurance. I sold my car, canceled everything. And when that wasn't enough, I texted my father. "Can I borrow money? I'll pay it back." He replied, "We just finished paying for Derek's wedding. Look into a personal loan." I took out a loan at 14% interest. Because survival doesn't wait for pride. And here's the part that matters most. 2 years later, I survived. I beat it. No evidence of disease, cancer-free. I rebuilt my life. New condo in Beacon Hill. Creative director. Dating someone kind. Dinner with Harper every Thursday. Peace. Real peace. And then last week my father called. And this time he was crying. But I didn't feel what he expected me to feel. I didn't feel panic, or urgency, or guilt. Because I had already learned something the hardest possible way. Family isn't who shares your blood. Family is who shows up. And when he told me he had Parkinson's, and that he needed me to move home, and that it was my responsibility as his daughter. I remembered that hospital hallway. And those 4 words, "We can't deal with this." So I looked him in the eye and I gave them back. "I can't deal with this." And I walked out. But what happened next, that's where everything changed. Because that wasn't the end, that was the beginning. When my father called me last week, the first thing I noticed wasn't his diagnosis. It was his tone. Richard Atwood did not sound like a man in control. His voice, the same voice that had commanded every room of my childhood, carried something fragile. Uncertainty. "Camille," he said, "I need to see you. Not how are you, not it's been too long, just I need." I should have let it go to voicemail. For 2 years, silence had been my shield, but curiosity is a powerful thing. And so is unfinished pain. "What's going on, Dad?" A long pause, then, "I've been diagnosed with Parkinson's." The word seemed to echo inside my kitchen. Parkinson's, slow decline, loss of control, tremors, dependence. And suddenly, instantly, I understood why he was calling. Not reconciliation, not regret, need. "There's a dinner Sunday," he continued. "Your mother, Derek, Megan, I want you there. We need to discuss the future." The future. As if I hadn't already built one without them. Still, I heard myself say, "Okay, I'll be there." After I hung up, I stood motionless while the salmon burned in the pan. The smoke alarm chirped once, a soft warning. I didn't move. Because my mind was already racing ahead. I knew my father. He didn't gather people for emotional conversations. He gathered them for decisions. Ones he had usually already made. And somehow, I already knew what he was going to ask. That night I called Harper. She answered on the second ring. "You sound tense," she said immediately. "I got a call from my father." A beat of silence. "That can't be good. Parkinson's." Another silence, heavier this time. "And there's a family dinner. He says we need to discuss the future." Harper exhaled slowly. "Cam, what do you think that means?" I walked toward the window overlooking the Charles River, watching lights ripple across the water. "I think," I said carefully, "that they've decided I'm available." "The unmarried daughter," Harper said quietly. "The independent one. The convenient one." Exactly. Families like mine run on invisible contracts, unspoken expectations. Roles assigned decades earlier and never reconsidered. Derek was the golden son, provider, legacy builder, father-to-be. I was the reliable spare, the one expected to bend, to step in, to sacrifice. "Are you going?" Harper asked. "Yes, why?" "Because ghosts don't stop haunting you until you face them. I need to look them in the eye when they ask." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that shifted the entire night. "Bring the folder." I hadn't opened it in months. But the second she said it, I knew she was right. That folder lived deep inside my phone, labeled simply family. Inside it was the story they would never tell, screenshots, call logs, texts, hospital visitor records, cold documentation of abandonment, proof that my memory was not exaggeration. When you survive something alone, people sometimes try to rewrite it later. I would not allow that. So that night I sat on my bed scrolling through 2 years of evidence. The unanswered calls, the florist text, the lone rejection, the empty visitor column repeating the same word over and over. None, none, none. By the time I closed the folder, I felt something settle inside me. Not anger, not revenge. Clarity. Sunday arrived faster than I wanted. I dressed deliberately, not to impress them, to armor myself. Black tailored slacks, cream silk blouse, the navy cashmere scarf I had bought after my 1-year remission, a gift to myself for surviving something no one had helped me survive. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone new. Not the daughter who once begged for crumbs of approval, but a woman who had built a life from ashes. My phone buzzed. "Harper, remember you don't owe them anything." I smiled. Then I picked up my purse and drove back toward the house that had never truly been home. My parents' colonial stood exactly as it always had. White siding, black shutters, a lawn trimmed with surgical precision. The kind of house that whispers, Nothing bad happens here. I sat in my car for 5 full minutes. Through the dining room window, I could see movement. My mother setting the table, Derek pouring wine, familiar choreography. As if time had paused the moment I left. My phone buzzed again. Harper. You survived cancer. You can survive dinner. She wasn't wrong. I stepped out of the car, walked the brick pathway, pressed the doorbell. 3 notes. The same 3 notes that had announced every arrival of my childhood. My mother opened the door. For a split second, something real crossed her face. Shock, relief, maybe even guilt. Then it vanished beneath practiced warmth. Camille! She pulled me into a hug before I could react. She smelled like Chanel No. 5 unchanged, like everything else in this house. You look wonderful, she said, holding me at arm's length. Healthy. She meant healthy, alive. Though she still hadn't asked, I stepped inside, and the past wrapped around me instantly. The mahogany dining table, the crystal chandelier, the curated perfection. But something caught my attention immediately. The photos on the wall, arranged chronologically. Family milestones marching forward through time. Except mine stopped at 18. Prom night, an awkward smile, frozen there. While Derek's life continued across the wall, graduation, engagement, wedding, legacy. I looked away before the sting could deepen. Cam, Derek stood, arms open. Golden boy unchanged, I let him hug me briefly. You look great, he said. His eyes flickered to my hair. Grown back, shorter, stronger. He had the decency not to comment. Megan sat beside him, one hand resting on her pregnant belly. 5 months if the family grapevine was accurate. The next Atwood already preparing to inherit the spotlight. And then I saw my father, at the head of the table, where he had always sat, but smaller now. His left hand trembled faintly against the tablecloth. Fear lived in his eyes. Something inside me registered that immediately. Power recognizes when power is fading. Sit down, Camille, he said, still commanding, but frayed. We have a lot to discuss. I took the chair across from Derek, placed my purse beside me. Inside it, the folder waited. The trap was set. I just didn't yet know how explosive the night would become. Dinner was served. Rack of lamb, roasted potatoes, green beans almondine. The same meal my mother prepared for every important gathering. We ate mostly in silence. Silverware scraping china, polite nods, careful avoidance. Everyone pretending this was normal. It wasn't. Finally, my father pushed back his chair and stood gripping the table for balance. I'll get right to it. No small talk, no bridge building, just business. You all know about my diagnosis. Parkinson's, early stage but progressive. He inhaled slowly. I'm going to need assistance. The room tightened. My mother stared at her plate. Derek shifted. Megan rubbed her belly. We've discussed it as a family, he continued. I nearly smiled at that. Discussed without me.